Joining me today is Bob Murphy. Bob, welcome to the episode.
Oh, good morning, Jim. Or I should say good day.
Hey, if you could do a favor for the viewers, if you could go through your professional background and provide a little overview of what SJK Consulting does.
Okay. For the past 40 years, up until March of 2020, I was working with the Sherwin-Williams Company in the water and wastewater infrastructure group. With that, I helped develop the water programs, the pulp and paper programs, and have been involved in both SSPC and NACE before they finally merged last year into AMP. Looking at that, SJK, I formed it. Actually, everybody's asked me what the letters stand for. They're actually the first initials of my three boys, Sean, Josiah, and Keith. That's where I started. I'm an independent consulting firm, basically helping people writing with their protective coating specifications. I've done some expert witness testimony, a few other cases such as that. But, with the pandemic going on, things have been slow.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing, too, I'll point out that you also are a certified master coatings inspector as well.
Yes, I achieved master coating inspector. I am a concrete coating inspector. I helped author that course and kind of mentor that system along. I've also PCI and PCS, as well as a NACE certified inspector with a marine endorsement. So I've got the bona fides as far as that goes.
You've got all the credentialing that anyone could ask for, right?
I hope so.
So with
you can always do more, though.
Yeah, you can always do more. So with all the credentialing you have, obviously in a professional capacity that you do provide expert services and things like that, ethics is a real big thing in business, but also in one's professional career. When our planning for this episode, we were talking about reasons why business ethics is important. And we kind of hit on three important reasons. And the first one was that business ethics is an essential skill. In your professional capacity, how difficult is ethics to learn as a skill?
In my personal opinion and in my particular work life, I'll put it that way, is that it's a no-brainer. It's pretty much, what's morally right or wrong. And usually I kind of follow the rule that if you have to ask if something's wrong, chances are it is. So looking at, sometimes the law will define conduct as being legal, but sometimes it's not ethical. So you have to do what's morally right, what's morally wrong for your own business. And each discipline that you have, whether it's engineering, education, whatever it happens to be, has its own code of ethics, if you will. So it's essential to learn what's going on in your particular business as far as what goes on and what's the moral high ground to take.
And then also, too, with your years in the industry, and obviously you're going to have a lot more years in the industry, you're probably also picking up a lot of skills off of other professionals that are working as well. So I would say, observing and also having other influencers. Have you had influencers really impact you when it comes to business ethics?
I've had quite a few. I really don't want to mention names because I'll leave somebody out and I'll get upset. But it seems like almost everybody that I've dealt with over the years has brought a little piece of that puzzle together, fit a little piece into there. I've been able to mentor some of our own people and some industry people as well. I do work on a lot of the standards committees right now with AMP, formerly with SSPC, and some with NACE. And doing that, and that helps bring the ethics part of it back into focus a little bit more for other people as well as just myself.
Now, with business ethics, the second reason why it's so important is that it does drive employee behavior. In your time in the industry, have you observed some unethical? You don't have to give me specifics or anything like that. Have you ever observed any unethical behaviors that are out there?
I have seen a couple of things over time that were, I'll put them as questionable, maybe not totally unethical, but kind of that really walking that thin line between what's right and what's wrong. I personally felt it was not the right way to go, but I got some other people involved and made sure I was going down the right road before I did anything about it. Uh, those times have been few, I will say that, in the industry. Very rarely have I run into unethical or things that are blatantly wrong. There have been a few marginal things, but there's marginal things in everything. Everybody tries to bend the line just a little bit, but you have to do what's right for yourself.
Yeah, you have to really look in those gray areas. And to your point, I think that's a great recommendation that if you feel you're in a gray area, you're uncomfortable, you need to ask a peer or ask other professionals their opinion on what to do.
Absolutely. You always get other people involved. You don't have to name names. You don't have to get into specifics, but just say, hey, here's the situation. This is how I feel. It's not particularly right. Am I way off base? Am I going down the right road? And get other people's influence into that as well, because they may have run across the same situation and dealt with it a completely different way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then the third reason why business ethics is very important. It benefits the bottom line. You working as a consultant, having a firm, in your past role with Sherwin-Williams, there's a lot of impact to a company's bottom line that can be a positive or a negative result due to following business ethics or the lack of following business ethics.
Well, I look at it this way: it's repeat business. If you're doing business in an ethical way, people are going to want to do business with you. If you're unethical, they may do business with you one time, but they're not going to come back. So you really always want to be as fair and as impartial as you can, in my mind, in dealing with people. Here's the way it is. It may not be the thing that you want to hear, but this is the facts as they're presented. Let's move forward and make sure everything's being done the right way. That's kind of in some of the courses that I've taken over the years. That's been the approach that they've taken as well. With the CCI course and the PCI course, we took those, making sure that you're moving them forward and moving yourself forward and doing it in the correct way.
Yeah, very good, very good. So let's move on and talk about professional codes of ethics. And a source that I refer to was the National Association for Professional Engineers. They have a very extensive resource available related to ethics and also to training information. Obviously, AMP has an ethics course that is required for certified inspectors and other credentialing that is offered through AMP. But with the National Association for Professional Engineers, they have a list of professionals are to follow acceptable practice ethics when working. In looking at, obviously, as an employer, it's important for contractors, for firms such as yourself, to have an ethics policy in place. What recommendation do you have when it comes to really writing out an ethics policy?
I think it's a good idea to have a written policy put down, or one of the places to put that is the employee handbook. I have such a massive firm with so many employees, which is myself. My handbook is not that massive, but looking at the professional code of ethics from the professional engineers, they've identified a bunch of principles that are out there. One of the thing that they hold paramount is safety, health, and welfare of the public in everything that they do. And I thought that was a pretty good message for a professional engineer to bring forward. One of the things that they brought up that I would hold to, and I think we were just talking about that, is that if in their judgment, they come into a circumstance where there's no, there's could be a hazard to life and limb, as it were. Get your employer involved, get the owner involved, and make sure that everyone's aware that what's going on, and this may not be the right thing to be doing. I thought that was a pretty strong message that they put in. That was their number one tenet that they put out there for rules of practice. Well, there's a couple they should not aid or abet unlawful practice in engineering of a person or a firm. And you hear a lot of that in business today of people trying to sneak things by business, as it were. And their code of ethics is really not pushing that at all, making sure that they're doing things in the correct way.
Definitely. And another one they point out is the relationships that you have with your clients, customers, and prospects. Obviously, entering into ethical business contracts, making sure that there's no, let's say, unethical offers that are being done to get business or to absolve oneself of a claim or a liability. When you've had the opportunity to work with contractors and also with owners, have you ever encountered, again, not naming names, have you ever uncovered anything when it comes to improper customer-client relationships when it comes to ethics?
I've seen a couple things over the years. I will say there's probably only one that sticks in my mind out of 40 years worth of dealing with contractors, owners, and facility people. And it was unfortunate that it happened, but I can see how it can happen. It was that line between a company owner and an inspector and employee, and how they were positioning themselves. I felt was quite a little bit improper. That really didn't fit the mold, as it were. And I got a couple people involved and made those unpleasant phone calls, but I wanted to do it to make sure that I was not pointing fingers at someone that was doing things the right way, or in a way that maybe I didn't even consider. Yeah. And that can happen quite a bit too.
Yeah, you always want to let that review, that due process go through before you obviously consider someone to be guilty. And, I point out too that all you need to do to look into the news, and you can see sometimes there are the state departments of transportation, they might have cases against either contracting bodies or individuals where, they've done something improperly. And again, that comes down to that business ethic. And it's good to see that, they do prosecute people for unethical business practices, and there is a price to pay because, if there is a penalty, it's definitely going to reinforce the need to follow ethical process and procedures.
And it goes back to that statement I made a little bit earlier, that repeat business. If, Department of Transportation, we're using that as an example, have a contractor that's somewhat unethical, they're probably not going to get that next job, or that job after that, or whatever the situation happens to be. And that's part of, you want to do business in the right way. Yeah, you want to save money, but saving money isn't the end all to be all.
Definitely very, very wise words there. And then also too, with the National Association of Professional Engineers, they stress very highly to make sure that you have high ethics when you're working with other professionals, in your relationship with them, in your personal efforts, and then also to professional efforts with them. You want to make sure that you do follow a very high ethical standard. You work with a lot of other professionals when it comes to inspection, specifications, and things like that. So I'm sure that you offer the same type of courtesies, and they offer that to you as well.
Yes, you try to be as upfront and as honest with people as you can be. I go back to the golden rule, and that's probably my education and my upbringing more than anything else, but I treat people the way I'd want to be treated. How would you want to be treated in that situation? Would you want to feel like you're being used? You want to feel like you're being helpful and getting the job done in the correct way, in the correct manner.
Very good, very good. And then let's go ahead. We'll cover our final topic, which is teaching professional ethics. A couple of the things that I had pointed out to you again in our pre-conversation for this episode is identifying ethical issues for learning case studies. There is a lot of opportunity that if you do encounter a unethical situation, is a learning opportunity to have these case studies that can be applied to the professional teaching of ethics courses.
Yes, one of the things that AMP is pretty much going down the road with right now is ethics, both from the inspector side and from the contractor side as well, and also the engineering side. I think that's one of the real benefits of AMP and the merger is bringing the engineering and the contractors together and getting that piece. That was SSPC was a big contractor organization, little weak, if you will, on the engineering side. The NACE part of that was the heavy on the engineering side, a little weak on the contractor side. Bringing those two together has really moved that ethical piece forward quite a bit. I can see that morphing into something over time as not only just for certified inspectors, but going into the facility owners and doing that with courses for that. I know in every course that I've taken, every course that I've taught, that's one of the components. We probably spend a couple hours on case histories and how to go through things. And hey, this is what could happen. How would you deal with it?
Definitely.
And teach people that way.
Yeah, I think definitely with the nice thing about having case studies, it's just like when I had taken concrete coatings inspector with you, when I did my PCI and other courses where you had an instructor, the instructor talked about real life situations. And then as a student, myself especially, you can take those case studies in those situations and break them down and offer, well, this is what I would recommend as a course of action. But the neat thing about with ethics cases is that it's an opportunity for the student to say, yeah, there's clear-cut ethics violations. Some cases might have gray areas, and it gives them an opportunity to say, this is a gray area. This is what I would do. And then you as an expert training that individual regarding ethics, you can say, yes, you could do it that way, but also look at it from this perspective. And that's probably the best learning model you can have out there.
Yeah, I think as you found when I was teaching CCI, I brought a lot of real world stuff into that course that really wasn't written down anywhere. But hey, here's a situation. Here's how it was approached. How would you deal with it? And let's kind of go through it step by step and see how this resolved itself. I think that's a very, very valuable teaching tool.
And the other aspect of teaching ethics too that I wanted to point out is that when you're working with a professional instructor, this is an opportunity to get a better understanding of what's best practice out in the industry. And especially that applies through all different, not only ethics training, but also in other coursework that you might have. We have a lot of people who are textbook, but when it comes to real world application, there can be some areas where a great example would be, it might be a gray area for the contractor, and they follow the industry best practice, and basically they don't get into an unethical situation. But if you don't really recognize that or realize that from good training and good certification, let's say that, you might call that contractor out on something that really is not as gray as you think it is. And so having that real world application is real critical. And, I know you do that in your courses as well when you teach that. So taking that to ethics makes a lot of sense as well.
Oh, I agree with that.
And then the other thing that I would cover is, you really want to, with the education aspect of it, you want to try to use these cases and use the dialogue that you have, best practices and everything like that, to encourage the students to really, again, assume innocence. Make sure that you report if it feels too gray. If it feels, if it feels gray, consult another professional. If it's too gray, maybe definitely call in somebody and report it. But if you see an unethical situation, you want to make sure that if you see it, you got to say it and you got to report that, because if you don't, you can become liable for any type of legal action that might be coming towards that person who unethically violated a best practice or a requirement of a contract.
Well, if you remember when I was doing the CCI with you guys, one of the things that I talked about constantly was observe, document, assess, and report. And that's essentially it. Is you're looking at you're observing what you see, you're documenting everything that's there. You go back and look at your report and say, is this correct? Am I right? And then if it's not, then you go and report it up the chain of command, if you will. And I think I hammered that home time and time again. The acronym ODAR was out quite a bit. And I think that's true, is if you're doing your job, you're observing what's going on, you're documenting and assessing it, and making those reports like you're supposed to, you can't go wrong. And if you're not doing it correctly, then you are going to go wrong. It's as simple as that.
Very good. Very good. Bob, it is great to see you again. Unfortunately, this past year, I've not been able to physically shake your hand, but I'm looking forward to see you either at Coatings Plus or the AMP 22 conference.
I'm planning to be in Phoenix, unless something else goes wacky. I'm hoping that everybody does the things that they need to do to protect themselves and protect others. I know I'm going to be on an airplane for the first time the end of August. I'm still a little leery about that, but I'll deal with it because I'm going to see my son. I haven't seen my son in 2 years.
Yeah, it's time.
Since the last time I saw him, he got engaged and got married.
Very good. Well, Bob, thank you very much, and have a great day, okay?
Okay, good seeing you again, Jim.